Just want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and to please speak into the microphone. And with that, we'll get started. Join me in the sign of our faith. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. We come together in hope from different community groups, answering the same call to service, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in gratitude for the trust placed in us, for the opportunity to serve, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in respect, aware of our diversity, willing to work for the good, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in awe of the wonder and beauty of each of God's children, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in God's name, and as we work together toward the same goal, each piece of the puzzle begins to fit neatly into place, creating a breathtaking picture of love, compassion, courage, and grace. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Okay, we have a land acknowledgement now.
As we know it today
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis. These lands surrounding you greatly
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect
the four directions: lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Great. So I also wanted to welcome you all to our final SEAC meeting of the 24-25 school year. Sorry, getting ahead of myself here. The weather's getting hot and sunny, so it's perfect. Okay, so on to the next item. Item 1.2, approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes, requests, edits, revisions, additions? No? Okay. Can I get someone to move for approval of the agenda? Okay, is that Marian? Marian, move it. And the seconder, please. Thanks, Trish. And Trish seconds. Great. Thank you. Okay. Any declarations of conflict of interest? Anybody? No declarations. Okay. So we'll go right into our presentations. Item 3.1, budget survey results for special education. We want to welcome Dr. Lisa Collmore. She's the Chief Officer of Research for the board. Dr. Collmore, if you're ready.
Okay, good
welcome.
Evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you through you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully I can see everybody. Thanks, Maggie. So thanks for inviting me here tonight. This is a slightly different version of the presentation that was shared at the regular board meeting in April. So I've tailored it to this particular group. So you can just go on to the next slide. So just a little bit about the budget consultation. It's an annual consultation that happens every year at the board, where we gather a bunch of feedback from various stakeholders across the system. And essentially the feedback is meant to be used to prepare the following school year's budget. So the goal is really to focus on identifying areas in which the community feels like we should prioritize extra monies and use it for any potential cost saving benefits. The questions were all aligned with our multi-year strategic plan. So achieving, believing, belonging, and becoming. And it was an online survey as it is every year. And it was open from March 18th to the 1st. So there were 4 questions this round or this year of the survey, as I mentioned, aligned with the multi-year strategic plan. So the first question was, where do you think additional budget investments would have the greatest impact on student learning and achievement? The second was, what areas of Catholic education, such as faith-based resources, faith formation, or chaplaincy support should be prioritized for funding? The third was, what budget priority areas should be considered to enhance student mental health and well-being, safety, and sense of belonging in our schools? And the fourth was, how should the board invest in school facilities, technology, programs, resources, or staff development to meet the evolving needs of students? So the questions were open-ended this year, and so stakeholders had an opportunity to provide their comments that way. So we heard from quite a number of respondents this year, over 1,300 of them, and this chart just shows you the breakdown of who the respondents said they were. So this year, most of our respondents said they were parents or guardians of a student at our board, and the second highest group there were HCDSB staff. We also sort of looked at where the respondents were coming from, and most of our respondents were from Oakville, and our lowest respondent group was from Halton Hills. So that just kind of gives you a sense of who the respondents were when you see the results next. So next one. So we heard from 1,300 people, but we received over 4,000 written comments. And so what we did was we read through them all, and the research team did a thematic analysis and pulled out key themes from each of the priority areas. So I'll tell you what the themes were at the high level right now. So for achieving, Megs, if you just press next, there were 4 key themes: increase the availability to learning materials, strengthen support for special education, strengthen support for STEAM programming, strengthen support for specialized student learning supports. Underneath believing, there were 2 themes: continue to nurture our faith formation through the school environment, and increase chaplain involvement and presence. For belonging, there were 3: prioritize student mental health, strengthen bullying prevention and school safety, and expand extracurricular opportunities. And finally, for becoming, there were also 3: invest more in educational technology, increase funding for student supports and resources, and provide ongoing professional development for staff. So these were the high-level themes that we heard from over the 4,000 results. So 5 of those themes you would have noticed related to special education. So I'll just go through them and highlight if there were any sub-themes in the main theme. So with respect to achieving, theme 2 was strengthen support for special education. And I provided some of the feedback that we actually received just to give you some context of the kinds of comments and feedback that we received. So we need more special education supports. With larger class sizes, we need to support the needs of many special educational needs that we have in our classroom. The teacher cannot possibly meet the needs of all students in the classroom when class sizes are large, are the norm now. This is where investment should give the greatest impact on student learning and achievement. We also heard things like special education supports. Everyone benefits from receiving this support. Students can learn and work at their own pace while teachers are instructing their lessons. Parents can also see the growth in their children. Not having enough of this support leads to a chaotic classroom. So in general, this theme was talking just about strengthening support in general for special education. Also under achieving was theme 4, was they talked about strengthening support for specialized student learning support. So we heard things like, for the achieving pillar, I suggest focusing budget investments on specialized learning supports and enhancing access to technology and hands-on learning opportunities. Allocating funds for tutors for intervention programs. These would provide personalized support for students struggling with literacy, numeracy, or other foundational skills. Ensuring equitable progress towards academic goals. These areas address both immediate needs and long-term success in a rapidly evolving world. Another one, specialized learning supports, more staff and teachers, and more staff so teachers and EAs can work in smaller groups and give every student the attention they require. Specialized staff to help identify students that may require special help earlier or in earlier grades. So a lot of the comments focused on these types of sentiments, and each theme had quite a number of comments that are sort of related to this sort of sentiment. So the next slide, Megs, thank you. So with respect to belonging, theme number 1 was prioritize student mental health. And this theme actually was broken down into several sub-themes. And so this is one that is relevant to special education. The first one there is increase the number of, the availability of, and the support to mental health staff. So a lot of the comments sounded like this: having access to YSW and SW more readily, who can, through board investment in comprehensive systems, provide mental health screening, social emotional learning, and physical activity, while also creating safe spaces and fostering resilience through student service supports and peer programs. Our YSW is only available 2 days a week, and of those is often at meetings away from the school. Another sub-theme within this theme of prioritizing student mental health was providing more mental health workshops, training, resources, programs, and services to our community. So comments like CBT training for staff or availability of staff to provide effective, high-quality mental health supports, and development of materials or resources to support the neurodiverse learners with mental health supports, increased access to functional learning settings for students, and adjusting our understanding of inclusivity to truly meet the needs of all students, planning for barrier removal for access to mental health supports. And finally, the next one is within the becoming pillar. The theme 2 was about increasing funding for student supports and resources, and the sub-theme there was more vague in terms of increase or focus on support for special education. So many comments about we need more special education staff, not nearly enough to support our students, ensure adequate support for students with special needs. So I've just highlighted for you the themes and sub-themes that relate to special education, but the full report was presented, as I mentioned, at the April 22nd regular board meeting, and it's available for you to read thoroughly on our board website. But all in all, I guess the takeaway is just these themes reveal what matters most to our stakeholders, at least the ones who responded, and this data will help the board prioritize our extra monies or resources accordingly, so that they will essentially make the greatest impact for all of our schools. And if you kind of want numbers, 5 of the 12 themes relate to special education. And the one underneath belonging, with respect to prioritize student mental health, was one of the top themes across all of the 12. So that is the takeaway in the presentation tonight. Thanks for your attention.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Collmore. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Collmore on the presentation? Okay. I want to thank you very much, Dr. Collmore. It's really great information. Just a quick comment. It seems, like you said, it seems like the people that are responding are ones that probably have a lot more invested in their child, I guess, the special education needs, as opposed to kids that don't have the supports. Was there much there that wasn't special education related, or I mean, yeah. So in terms of percentage, if you could just ballpark it, please.
So through you, so the full report does have all of the other numbers. I didn't focus on them here tonight, but yes, there was also other topics there of areas that were of interest to the stakeholders who responded.
Thank you. Perfect.
You're welcome.
No more questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Collmore. Appreciate your time visiting us here at SEAC. Enjoy your summer. Thank you. Okay, on to our next presentation, item 3.2, financial update, and it's being presented by Aaron Lofts, our Chief Financial Officer, and Adam Cross, Senior Manager of Financial Services. If you gentlemen are ready to go, okay, great. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us back again for our yearly discussion on the core education funding and how it pertains to our board and the budget process. Maybe I'll start off. I know we're going to get into a little bit of it here, but we just received the funding announcement a little bit over 3 weeks ago now. So we had to have the budget prepared in 3 weeks. We received it May 23rd, and we are bringing it to board tomorrow, but we had to have it in for the upcoming board meeting. So there really wasn't as much time. We usually like speaking long before this, but unfortunately it's when we received the funding. It was much later this year. So thus we are speaking to you the day before we present the budget tomorrow at our board meeting. So apologies, but really it was outside of our control. It's not what we normally like to do. It's unfortunately what we have to do in this case. But just so you know, your voice was heard through Cassandra, Superintendent Jack Cadera, and is part of our budget. And Adam will actually get to a little bit of that a little later. So our next slide, please. So just looking here, we have a few things here. Some of it might be refreshers, some of it might be new items. So just to kind of start off with, we're going to look at our reporting cycle, right? We're going to look at the budget process and stakeholders and things like that, the role of SEAC in the budget process, our enrollment, special education funding, special education revenue, special education expenses, and finally, special education funding shortfalls. So looking at our stakeholders and all our feedback for the cycles, there's really three main cycles. Margaret, next slide. Thank you. There's really three main cycles that we have from reporting. There's technically another one, but we won't. March 31st. Does everyone know what the provincial deadline is for their books? I just kind of gave it away. March 31st. Yes. So we do a small kind of year end for the provincial roll up for March 31st. So we didn't put that one here, but at least from the board perspective, we start our original budget estimates, which is what we're doing right now, which we'll bring to the board in June, which is tomorrow, and hopefully have it approved by the end of June. Then we have our revised estimates. So we take the information we receive from October with enrollment, get a better idea of what our enrollment is going to look like for the year. We bring that back to the board in December for approval and submission by the middle of December or so. And then finally, our audited financial statements. So our fiscal year is August 31st. So I guess technically September 1st, August 31st. That is the year, just like the school year. We follow the school year in our case, which is why we have to do a mini year end in March for the provincial roll up. And we bring that first we bring it to our audit committee, beginning of November or so, and then we bring it to the Board of Trustees to approve our financial statements in the middle of November, and then we submit to the ministry after that. Next slide, please. So what's our budget process? So this slide, and it's quite small, but I believe you have a copy in your package. We say February, but it actually starts even earlier than that. We have to submit our projections for our enrollment, our 5-year projections for our enrollment actually in December. It used to be end of November, beginning of December. So we kind of project to the ministry, this is what we think our enrollment's going to look like over the next 5 years or so. That's kind of the first start, as well as getting some feedback. The ministry will ask for feedback on the upcoming budget cycle, which we provide as well. And a lot of organizations also provide that feedback. But really, when we really start getting into it is in February. The main one here is we do our stakeholder consultation starts. Dr. Collingmore just went through that. Lisa just went through that with everybody. That's part of our process. Then we move into March, give updates on the budget. Unfortunately, this year there wasn't many updates because we didn't get much information. If everyone remembers too, we also had an election in that period as well. So once the writ dropped, there really wasn't any information coming out of Queen's Park with respect to the budget. So really, we didn't have too much to work from. We come into May. This year is when we actually received our budget information, and we start looking at the grants and how much funding we have. How we approached it this year, everyone, because of the lateness of getting our funding, is we essentially rolled our budget forward this year. So with the exception, and Adam will speak to some of the exceptions in special education, it's a very status quo budget for this current year. Any adjustments we will make at the revised estimates that we talked about in the ones that are in December. If there is any additional funding and such for any kind of new initiatives or programs enhancements, we'll look at it at that time in December. And then June is where we are now. We put SEAC up there as our presentation. We like to do that. Really, we have it penciled in April originally, and then we went to May, and then we had to go to June. So normally this is long completed, and we've already met and talked and had the questions, but unfortunately this year it's a June presentation. So we bring our draft budget, which will be tomorrow, and then we bring our final budget for approval before, after tomorrow and sometime before the end of June. So, next process, the budget stakeholders. Really, this one here, you can see it's actually a good little synopsis of all the feedback and such we reach out to in different areas we reach out to in the system. It's kind of more of a visual for everyone just to have, so you can kind of refer to that as needed. Role of SEAC. So we received part of the role of SEAC, and I think a number of you I remember from last year, so I think we talked last year as well. but it's actually part of the Education Act. There was actually an Ontario regulation 46497. So it's an old regulation going back to 1997, where as part of that, SEAC members are to have the opportunity to participate in the special education planning process. So as you can see, we are here a day before bringing the budget, but I can mention that rest assured that Cassandra has brought her needs forward and we'll be adding, if there's additional funding for December, we'll have additional needs to be brought forward at that point in time. Adam, like I mentioned, will speak forward or speak to some of the items that we've added to the current budget anyways for June. Next slide. I think we can go to the next slide too. So this is a big one, enrollment. So our high as an organization, as Halton Catholic District School Board in enrollment was pre-COVID. So if you look on that chart up there, 2019 and 2020 was our pre-COVID year essentially, right? COVID started in March 13th of 2020. And by that point in time, essentially all our enrollment was already, kids were already in the schools and such. So that was our peak in enrollment at 36,444 students is what we had at that point in time. And then you can see us dropping over the next number of years. And then all of a sudden in 24, 25, we're starting to creep up a little bit. So for this year, we're creeping up. And then our revised estimates, we're now over 36,000 students. And now what we're forecasting for next year is 36,422 or so students, which is really 22 off our all-time high as a board. Now, the big part, and you can see that really our special education, our kindergarten students, our JK and SK kids, have been falling since that 2019-20. So we went down from about 4,300 to 39 to 37, 35, 34, 34 again, and now it's starting to come back up. So we've kind of, it looks like we've hopefully bottomed out on the JK SK, and now we're starting to move upward. Now, why is this so important to everyone here? That's where 85 to 90% of our funding comes from, is based on enrollment. So without enrollment, rather than increasing enrollment, it impacts a lot of what we can do as an organization. So we had a few years when we were declining enrollment. It was really something that our board has never really experienced in 20, 30 years. We were constantly growing. And when it really turned a bit, it made it very difficult from a budgeting perspective because it was something that we really didn't have to work through before. So it looks like we've kind of turned a little bit. Elementary is still going down, but you got to remember we've had all those years. So if you think of it, the JK students that we had in 1920 would be in about grade 5 now. So you can see that it's been going down since that point in time. So now we should start seeing the increase, which will help with our elementary numbers. So secondary, if you look on secondary, it's grown tremendously. Like we were 12,800 back in 1920, and now we're essentially 2,000 students more in what we're budgeting for next year. So that's a significant increase that we have on our secondary panel. Now you might ask, how could that be such an increase given that the elementary has been going down that period of time? A large part of it is a lot of the students are coming from the public board to our schools. So a lot of public school students are joining our community in the secondary panel. So that's been a big part of our increase. So, and then you might ask, well, how are we funded? So like, how do we get our funding? And I mentioned enrollment's such an important number. What determines our enrollment numbers? So there's really two important dates, two count dates we have as an organization. All school boards in Ontario have to follow the same requirement. So we look at it October 31st. We look at our enrollment as of that day on October 31st. And then our next date is March 31st. We take 50% of our October 31st number, 50% of our March 31st number, and that's our average daily enrollment, which is what we use, what the ministry uses to determine what our funding enrollment number is. So those numbers we were looking at before, those would have been our average daily enrollment numbers we use for funding perspective. So that shows where our increase in, at least overall, we're back to where we were pre-COVID. So I'm going to hand it over to Adam. He's going to walk through a couple other items.
Okay, thank you. So the next few slides will just go over the special education funding that we receive as part of our core education funding from the province. So you may recall from when we presented last year that the province revamped their funding model starting last year. And so this is the second year of that revamp, and there's been a couple of small changes when it comes to the special education fund. So within the special education fund, there are four key components. There's the per pupil allocation, so similar to our other funding that we get in our core ed, that's based on that average daily enrollment number. There's a special education component that deals with pupil allocation. And then we have our differentiated needs, our complex supports, and our specialized equipment. So the next few slides will kind of go over those different components. And just a reminder, so special education funding is enveloped for special education purposes. So we can't use the funding we receive for special education for any other board expenses, but we can use other board funding to help supplement special education needs. So our per pupil, typically this is to fund our staffing costs for special education. So your teachers, your educational assistants, your professional, paraprofessional, and then professional development and learning materials that go along with those positions. So we put sort of the funding that we get for each of the age groups on this slide so you can kind of see. So that JK to grade 3, we're at about $1,200, just over that. 4 to 8, we're at $935, and then in our secondary panel, we're at $616. So taking those average daily enrollment, and it's for all students, not just special education when it comes to the per pupil allocation. So it's all our enrollment that drives this portion of special education. Next slide, please. So then we get into the differentiated needs, and this is where it's more specifically tailored to special education and our board's needs with respect to that. So there are 7 components within this. I won't go through them all, but the one I do want to highlight is that first one, the special education statistical prediction model. So when the ministry did the revamp last year, they started to update the census data that was being used in this funding. So prior to last year, they were using 2006 census data. Well, a lot has changed across the province, especially in Halton as well, when you're looking at the census data. And so they're doing a 5-year roll-in of the 2021 census data. So we went from 20% being allocated towards the 2021 data last year to now we're at 40% for this year. And we saw a significant increase because of the census move in the special education statistical prediction model portion. So this is good news because we should continue to see that grow over the next 3 remaining years as they roll in the 2021 census data. And then our complex supports. So there are 4 components to this one. Last year, there were only 3. So the new one is this care and treatment education programs component, which we received $434,000 under this allocation. I think we're still trying to understand what the expectation is for this funding as it relates to this care and treatment program. But just to remind you, when they did change the funding formula for special education, while special education funding is enveloped as a whole, prior to last year, it used to be enveloped into the specific different components. We have more leeway now. So if we're unable to use the full 400 as it relates to this care and treatment, we can allocate those funds to cover other needs across the board. So just something to be aware of when we're talking about our funding. And then the last component is the special education allocation or specialized equipment allocation. So the C. So again, there's 2 components in this one. There's a per pupil amount, and then there's a claims-based component. So when items are greater than cost more than $5,000, we can claim those costs back to the ministry. So what does all that translate to for special education for 25-26? So when we look at our total revenue for special education, we are up to $61,882,000 for special education in 25-26, which is an increase of 4.4% or 2.6 million from our 24-25 revised budget. So you can kind of see on this slide our per pupil.
Sorry, I'll let you know.
Yeah, so our per pupil allocation has an increase there because of our growing enrollment and the increase in funding allocation with respect to that. And then again, you'll see I talked about that special education statistical prediction model. So it's moving from 14.4 to 15.3 million for 25-26. So a significant jump there when it comes to that component of the differentiated special education needs. And then if you look at the next slide, it'll talk about the complex support. So again, you're seeing that care and treatment component that we did not have last year of 434,000. And then our SEA equipment has a slight increase from last year. So one of the other things to highlight that changed when the ministry changed the funding model. So mental health kind of used to be grouped in with special education under the previous model. Now it's separated, although we kind of look at it as a board together still. So it kind of skews a bit of the reporting numbers when we look at it, but we're trying to reflect both kind of components. So the special education fund total revenue is 60.5 million, and then the mental health allocation is an additional 1.4, and that's what gets us the total of 61,882 that I mentioned before. So then if we go to the next slide, we also get responsive education program grants. So these are special grants that we typically receive every year, and those funds have to be spent on these particular initiatives. So there are a continuation of ones that we saw last year for special education. So there's an additional qualification grant. Our summer learning for students with special education needs continued, as well as our special education needs transition navigator. And then on the next slide, there's two more. So there's a cooperative education supports for students with disabilities pilot program, and then summer mental health supports. So again, these were all responsive education programs that we received last year or partway through 24-25, and they're continuing for 25-26, which is good. So it allows us to continue addressing these needs. When we look at our expenses for the upcoming year and sort of over the past few years, so our total expenses for our special education component for 25-26 is 68.75 million, and then our mental health costs are another 6.5 million. So that gets us a total of 75.2 million, which is a 5.2% increase or a 3.7 million increase over our 24-25 revised estimates that we brought in December. So what's changed? When we look at classroom teachers, that section of our budget, we did add an additional 7 certs for the 25-26 year. So that's good news. As you saw in the budget survey results, a lot of the feedback when it comes to special education is adding more resources. So we have added some additional resources for special education while trying to remain within our funding overall as a board that we received from the province. Also kind of driving the cost for the budget is increases in staffing, so grid rates. So all the kind of collectively bargained agreements have settled as of now. So we're seeing the additional grid movement and grid rate increases for 25-26 over 24-25. We're also continuing to forecast an increase in supply costs, primarily around EAs. So we do see absenteeism across all positions, but particularly EAs has been on the rise. So we've increased our budget accordingly for that. And one of the kind of drivers of the EA increase from revised estimates to our projection for 25-26 is we did have some vacancies at revised estimates last year of about 15 positions. So we prorated their salary based on how long the position had been vacant at the time. So now we've moved those back up to a full 1.0 FTE for the 25-26 budget. But we originally started with the same number of EAs in 24-25, but sometimes turnover happens, and we have variances within the year accordingly. The only slight decrease in textbooks and supplies is related to professional assessments, but that was offset by an increase in 2.5 psychologists. So we did this similar thing last year at budget time. So we have some vacancies on the psychologists in the psychologist department. We actively recruit for those positions, but anytime we can't fill the position, we move money to have third-party assessments done for our students. So we're projecting to recruit and fill the positions that were vacant in 24-25. I think we're on our way to filling all the vacancies. I believe we have half them filled already, which is good news. So that's kind of the main change with that. And then with professional development, it's decreased from last year, but that's, again, just a reallocation. So we had a large portion of funding for training for teachers when it relates to the specialized equipment, but really where the majority of the training is with our students. So that just moved from the professional development category to a different category within the budget. So it falls under the kind of textbooks and supplies area instead of the professional development area for the upcoming year. So those are sort of the changes, but happy to report that we were able to add the 7 positions in special education because most departments didn't see any movement, especially when it comes to staff. So this is a really positive thing as we move forward with special education. But then we get to the shortfall. So unfortunately, our spending continues to outpace our expenses when it comes to special education. So we do have some components that we're able to allocate from our other core education funding to special education to offset some of the costs. Ultimately, we cover the full deficit through funding from other areas for the board. But looking at our 25-26 budget, we have a cumulative deficit of 7.1 million, which is slightly up from the 6.9 million we had at revised estimates for 24-25. So you'll notice we tried to break it out between the mental health and the special education funding components. And so we're at about 2 million when it comes to our special education funding envelope deficit, but where we really see the pressure is on the mental health support side. So there's a $5 million deficit when it comes to what we're funded for mental health versus what the board spends in this area. And, you know, even though we're spending so much more, you can still see with the survey that there's still that pressure that the board is facing with providing even more support. So hopefully, maybe with the SEAC committee's help and sort of advocating for more mental health funding to the province, that we might see some going forward. But for 25-26, it really didn't move. So it was at 1.4 million 1.38 million last year and only 1.4 million for this year. So again, there is a large pressure that we see on the mental health side. This is where our CYCs and our social workers are grouped into our budget.
That brings us to the end, everyone. I guess any questions or comments or?
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Adam. A lot of good information there. It's always a lot to absorb. It looked like it was a positive kind of presentation there with the I guess it went from 6 allotments before to 4 allotments with the provincial funding. They changed the formula last year, right?
Yeah, we've gone up 7 additional positions, additional 3.7 million in funding, but it's been kind of offset. We added positions as well in this budget, so we added the 7 certs.
Okay.
So that's.
Has the funding model from the province changed what we had significantly, or I know the census information.
The census data is a big one, right? Okay. Like that's a significant one, and we still have 3 more years of updates for us to get. So we're in year 2 of 5. So that will be a positive to us. So hopefully it starts bringing down. Where you really see it, and now that they switched it out, is I think as most boards, you included the mental health and spec ed all under one umbrella, right? Your CYCs and your social workers and such. When you split it out, you really see how much more on the mental health side we have, and we support with our social workers and our CYCs. Like there's a $5 million deficit there, whereas on the spec ed side, it's $2 million deficit. Still a deficit, but when you really see it's the mental health portion, and there's constantly need for more mental health.
Certainly. One final question or comment. I know you probably communicate with other boards and other professionals. Is this a similar thing with like mental health, shortfalls, I guess, increasing across other boards as well, I guess, right?
I would assume, I shouldn't say I know, like, yeah, in the other boards that spec ed definitely is across the province. You pull every board, they're in that deficit. We are some of the higher per capita for our deficit, but we've made that choice as an organization, and we keep funding, rightfully so, the area. I do know the public board as well has a significant deficit in this area as well. So for Halton, we really do have a deficit in this. Now, if you look at it, the data is 2006. So you can imagine we've been dealing with this for all these years, right? What really caused our deficit to increase. Even now, we're only going back to 2021, which is, we're not going to 25, 26, so that's going to be 5-year-old data soon. But it's the most recent, it's more updated at least, and you can see that we're one of the boards that benefit. There's boards across the province that are going the other way. So they're losing funding on their spec ed. So we're gaining because of our demographics in Halton, but there's other boards across the province that are having the opposite effect, where they're going down in spec ed because of that adjustment to the 2021 census data. So
that's great. Yeah, and so 2 years ago, this SEAC, we sent a letter to the ministry asking them to look at the funding model to kind of change it, because we were kind of getting shortchanged in Halton Catholic. We were always, I remember seeing, we were at the low end of a lot of the boards across the province, and the growth wasn't being, I guess, factored in. So it's great that they changed it, but we're still obviously behind. And maybe we should consider a mental health letter to head up next year as part of the SEAC's goals, just to kind of help maybe push that along with other SEACs hopefully as well.
Advocating for it is the best thing we can do. So
I'm sorry, I monopolized all the questions, comments. I apologize. Anyone have comments or questions for Aaron or Adam? Brianna, go ahead.
It's the way. Sorry, when you mentioned about secondary, the bump of about 2,000 students coming over from the public school.
Well, not all, but
approximately, let's just say.
Yeah.
Do you ever factor out those numbers, what that looks like for those the kids that are coming from the public school? Are they increasing our numbers in spec ed? Like, I know we also have the IB program, the AP
sports program,
exactly. So
STEAM,
so I mean, we're drawing from the public school for those, but do you take out the numbers and see, are they also increasing our special education numbers as well coming over to us?
That's a great question. I know I can speak a little bit to it. AP has been a big increase in the last couple of years for us, so that has had an impact on our board. Sandra, do you have
I don't have through you, Chair. I don't have all the numbers. That's a great question. We do see an increase in the support as far as from our feeder schools going into secondary. So we do continue to see that bump in the spec ed support as well, which is why I was really very fortunate won the arm wrestle to get those extra certs to support. And I know our protected complement for our EAs is far less than what we staff for. So we continue to ensure that our EA complement is rich, as well as our CYCs, which is where the expense from our mental health, I think takes a bit of a hit. This year we were able to increase our social worker complement by 2. I'm hopeful for at Revise to be able to continue on that trajectory, just because we recognize the supports. So not only the special education needs, but we also have the mental health needs that come with more complex cases when they get to secondary. So we're noticing that that's a response that we need to continue to work toward.
Can I just ask you a secondary question to that? So does every one of our high schools have a youth support worker and like a CYC and social worker on site 5 days a week?
So every secondary school has, through your chair, a social worker as well as a CYC. And then our elementary schools, roughly, they all have a CYC and access to social work. Some of our smaller populations, it's tough because there's a smaller population, so a need becomes a more significant. But then, we do try to share. I know this was a shift from my experiences when I came from a different board. We didn't have a designated CYC every day in that previous life. So I know that it continues to be a priority, and that's why we're overspent in that area. But we are,
so that's where we're seeing why. Yeah, that answers my question, why we're seeing the increase as well, right? Because when you look at other boards, they might be sharing with schools not being full-time or full, 5 days a week in the classroom for all our high schools across the board. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Trustee Powell, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a few questions if you don't mind. The funding, okay, this actually goes back to the slide before the spec ed fund revenue. I'm sorry, it didn't have the numbers, so bear with me. You mentioned something about if it goes over, you can allocate back to the ministry.
Special education equipment?
Yes, was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not new funding. They changed the threshold that we can claim on, but they recognize that some students have special education needs from an equipment perspective that are quite costly to ensure that they are successful in school. So basically, the board pays a certain amount of money, the $5,000 threshold, and then anything above that, the province then provides the funding to cover the remaining cost. So that's where we go back, and there's a separate submission process that the spec ed department completes every year that identifies those equipment needs that exceeded that $5,000 threshold that we then receive funding back.
It's like a deductible almost.
Yeah.
Like a deductible?
Deductible of 5,000.
Big deductible.
Siri, I'm not talking to you. A deductible, sorry, of 5,000. Okay. So the board pays that and then we can allocate anything over and above 5,000. Is that?
Yeah, if the equipment costs more than $5,000, the province pays the remainder of that cost or reimburses us. We have to pay the full cost, but then they reimburse us anything above the 5,000.
Thank you. May I go on?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry if I'm holding up, but you also mentioned that, again, this was the slide before that, about the care and treatment component, that can be used for different funding.
Yeah, so prior to the change in funding in 24-25, when we looked at the different components, so a lot of the components are similar, but they used to be envelopes specifically for those different components within special education. So we'd have a behavioral analyst portion, and we could only spend it on behavioral analyst costs, or other areas within special education where we could only spend it on that. We had like a training component that we could only spend on training. Now it's opened up, so we don't have to spend it particularly on the items that we're funded for within special education, as long as we're spending it in special education. So we don't have to spend it how we're funded, but we have to spend it on special education, is basically the change that happened.
Okay, perfect. May I ask through your chair, this might be to Superintendent Jack Caldera, does somebody ever get turned away from support because that funding has, or this is new that we can now move the funding, like spend it on different, I think it was 7 components?
Yeah, if anything, I think it helps us offset our rising costs. So before, we would still support the student, but then it would go to our deficit because we couldn't recognize the revenue because we didn't have any more revenue. But now we can take kind of from the different components that we weren't necessarily spending the full complement on, like training, for example. If we didn't utilize all the training previously, it would get deferred until we could use it on training. Now we can take that money and put it towards a different need that's actually more present than the training person, for example.
Okay, so there.
To add to that, and I literally just heard about this, one of the benefits of the CTEP acronym, the Care and Treatment Education Program, is that boards have some flexibility to partner or to deliver the program. And so as we mentioned, I think it was 2 SEACs ago, we rolled out the Thrive and Transformations program, which I think will fall under this umbrella, and we are hoping to expand it. This will certainly offset some of those expenses. So if I understand and interpret it properly, there was just a brief meeting with some other Ontario superintendents who were talking about, okay, what can we do with this? And I did offer that we had a program, and it sounded like other boards are looking at ways that they can also respond in a similar way that we're currently doing. So it allows us to continue to do that work, which is the great part, without trying to partner or take from other departments, which I think currently we're kind of falling under alt ed funding. So this will allow us to kind of operate independently of that partnership, or at least to expand it. So it's exciting, but it's still very new. Like was alluded to, the budget came out just a few weeks ago, and so we're still unpacking and asking ministry questions. So, yeah.
May I continue?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, then you mentioned about the responsive education programs. Oh, that was answered. These are new, so it's the second year of funding that we've received. This was it increased for this year, or was it, or just like
I had that
tiny?
on my other slide.
It's pretty much status quo for the special education components. So we did see some increases when it was related to a grant that had a staffing component, to the ministry recognizing that people's grids are increasing. So we saw some slight increases, but for the most part, the rest remained relatively status quo.
Okay. And then a follow-up to that is just, do you know, and sorry, this might put you on the spot, but are we able to find out, like, did we go over this last year, or were we?
Our funding?
Yeah.
We haven't finished the year yet for reporting, so I don't necessarily have that information yet. So.
Okay. And it'll be just something to track, I think, over the years, just because those were pretty good initiatives that it can go towards. So, can I continue? Sorry. And then thank you for adding 7 certs. We know the works of certs, and thank you for arm wrestling. I hope you get a massage. The EA, the high absenteeism, and I've heard this repeatedly, I've experienced it in my own life and just with, fellow, just hear it in the community. So does this mean we're hiring more, or it's just that you were able to fill those roles? And this might be superintendent or.
Or do you want us to start?
Sure.
No, I don't know. It's. I was just going to say, what we did at Revise was essentially, we still had the same complement, but we knew we weren't allocating the full salary to it full year, right? Because we were already in, and we knew we couldn't have them hired by January. So we kind of pulled back whatever expense between essentially the 4 months between September and December. We pulled back that savings because we don't need to allocate all that funding because we didn't have it for the whole year. So then now this year, we have to put them all back in. So it looks like an increase, but really it's not an increase. It's more just we're using it. Yeah.
And I was just going to add, it is a group that's particularly vulnerable and dealing and supporting with students who come with, a myriad of transmissions of cold and flu. But we were able to maintain, I think it was a high 80s, low 90s percentage-wise of fill rate. So we had very few jobs go unfilled. And the training has been done, when they're hired, then they get to do safe management training. And so we had a really high turnover of recruitment and back in, and into the system this year, which we're hoping to continue that model to continue to support and respond to needs.
That was my question too, was with supply staff, or are we concerned is that the role is not being covered, but you're saying it was about between 80 and 90?
Yeah, we had a very high
Coverage.
fill rate.
Okay.
There was concern as we did approach cold and flu season to not be able to meet that demand, and we were still able to meet that demand.
Okay.
At that point, it was, like I said, high 80s, low 90s. I don't have the exact number.
Okay.
So I could get that information for you, but I know that we had a very successful fill rate despite the fact that we had those absentees.
I didn't hear a lot this year. I have heard it in the past, but I haven't heard. That's just my own experience. But yeah, I know it's a tough area. So over that. And then just my final one, it was about the spending outpacing the needs, especially. So we've got $2 million deficit with the spec ed, but the $5 million deficit in mental health. And I think it was about 33,000 was just the difference. Yeah. But meanwhile, stats everywhere are telling us we need it. And I guess that's to follow up with you, Chair, about how do we support advocating for this? Like this, everywhere we're hearing is, yeah, we need to support mental health. We need to support it. It's a crisis going on. So is there something, maybe this is just a SEAC, how can we help? How can we advocate for more funding for it? So I'll leave it with that. Thank you very much.
Any more questions for anyone for Aaron Radham? Oh, Trustee Sanderson, go ahead.
Sorry, thanks a lot. Through you, Mr. Chair, can you just remind me, certs are in classroom staff, right?
Yes.
I'll defer.
Yes, they are.
So do we anticipate hiring any itinerants or consultants this year?
So we did increase our consultant complement last year.
Yeah.
So we will maintain that, which is really good news. And our CERT deployment has increased as well. So our itinerant staff is status quo. Those are specialized, but we've increased that support on the ground because we think that's where the need is. And with the complement of consultants, we're building capacity within the system to hopefully continue to do the good work that's been happening. But our iCert complement is about the same.
So we're not allocating any more money for sort of overhead board level?
For the, no, not currently. I think last year was a bit of a shift. So we're, kind of riding that wave to see how, now that we've gone from the implementation, how does that management look like? And then should we have to arm wrestle at the end of this year, school year coming, sorry, then we'll consider and review what the needs are. But we really wanted to make sure, to your point about secondary, we had an increase of student needs in secondary and we weren't responding at the same rate. And then we did open up a gifted classroom as well as a new set classroom so that we can eliminate wait lists and have all the students that we need in programming. So popular. So that was one of the ways that we're trying to address. Plus, I think we did add, just in response to new school communities anticipating that growth. So we were able to add certs in the elementary panel for that reason as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from anybody? No? Guess that's it. Thanks so much for your time. I know it's a busy time for you and your staff, so we appreciate you coming in and unpacking the numbers and explaining to us. So thank you and enjoy your summer and good luck with good luck with everything.
Yes, tomorrow, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, just moving on. I forgot to mention earlier that the agenda is just a slight change. We're going to move the end of year slideshow to the end of the meeting, just so we can kind of have that as a send off after our adjournment and closing prayer. So we're moving item 3.3 the presentations down to item 14.1 after the adjournment and closing prayer. So just a little bit of house in there. And so now on to the next item, item 4, approval of the minutes. That was included with the agenda package. You all had a chance to review it, I hope. I wasn't here for the previous meeting, so if we can have, if anyone has any changes, edits, suggestions, the minutes, no? Okay. If there are no changes, then can I ask for a mover for the minutes? Abiola is going to move it, okay. And a seconder, please.
Second.
Trustee Powell, second? Okay. Abiola moves it. Trustee Powell seconds? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, great. So we'll move on to item number 5, business arising from previous minutes. I don't think we have any summary of outstanding items, do we? I didn't see anything. Okay, great. So we will go on to, that's a quick item. We'll go on to, we didn't have any policies to review. Item 6. Item 7, no action information items. Item 8, board committee updates from SEAC representatives. I did have, so this is about the special education plan committee. I met with Greg Santorelli earlier this week, last week, just to discuss the proposed changes to the special education plan. We're meeting again on Monday, June 23rd, and not as many changes as we normally have, but there's some edits and some changes coming through, and I'll be meeting with Greg again on Monday just to finalize those and go over some items. And I guess that would be, sorry, Superintendent Jackalari, does it get finalized by the end of the year, end of the school year? Is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Chair. We have a deadline to submit it by the end of July, I believe. Okay. So once you're done your good work, I'll take a look at it and sign off. I send it to Director Klein, and then it goes to the ministry for approval. They might have questions. Last year's version went through without any questions or needing any revisions. And then go through the process all over again.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so on to item number 9, communication to SEAC. We're going to start with 9.1, trustee report. Trustee Powell, are you ready for report? Great.
Thank you, Chair. Because we've just met 2 weeks ago, so we just had a policy meeting on June 10th, and just a couple items I wanted to have flagged that came to the table and as action items that are going now to our next board meeting. Just some highlights or just some wording changes in was policy II-44 about student mental health and well-being. Just language change. This was one that SEAC was involved in the review process, so everything is looking good. It talked about the tiered model of intervention, equity-based mental health supports, and a commitment to reducing stigma. So I think that also goes hand in hand with us trying to advocate too for funding. So that will come to the board table. The next one was, this was the policy II-49, English as second language, ESL, and our English literacy development programs and services. This was relevant to SEAC just because it also could be for students with special needs who require language support. It is, I think the revised wording is to improve pathways for ESL and ELD students, just to ensure we're getting adequate and appropriate programming. And a couple of highlights from, was it June 2nd? What did yeah, June 2nd here at the board office. We raised the flag, the pride flag, And like our verse for the year too, it was Psalm 139. I praise you for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. So that was kind of woven throughout the service as well. And we also had, the final item was that same week, sorry, June is all over. June 3rd, we had an Equity and Inclusive Education Steering Committee meeting. I was there to take over for Trustee Kelly, and just our Human Rights and Equity Office provided updates on ongoing training, Student Equity Symposium, Black History Month. They also looked ahead to events such as the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance Retreat, and the promotion of girls in STEAM. And actually it was an excellent meeting. It was really nice to hear what is happening and what's ahead. So that's it from the board table. And then we have another board meeting tomorrow night. And I think there's one more before the end of the year for budget. So we'll continue to advocate for SEAC funding and mental health as well. So that's it.
Great, thank you, Trustee Powell. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Trustee Powell on the trustee report? No? Okay, great. Thank you, Trustee Powell. On to the next item, item 9.2, Superintendent Report. Superintendent Jack Caldera, if you're ready, pass it over to you.
I'm ready, through you, Chair. So, okay, perfect. I'll start off with retirement and resignations, wanting to acknowledge within the department that we do have a number of retirements. Grace Fabiano, Nadia Pavich, Tracy Wright, Rosemary James, Adele Wasvert, I don't know if she says it French or not, Michelle Chiarloni, and a name that would be familiar to this table, Lisa Vaca, who is one of our consultants. And it gives me no pleasure to share that we do have a resignation. Jennifer Thompson, our coordinator, is going to be supporting the District School Board of Niagara in a role of vice principal. We'll be done with the Burlington Skyway, but our loss is definitely their gain. So, and Jennifer, of course, is here tonight. So hopefully before she leaves, we'll get an opportunity for members here to wish her well. We still have 2 weeks with her, and 2 weeks and 9 days. 9 days. But part of our planning, so we will be transitioning and hopefully, well, not hopefully, in September, I'll be able to share who our new consultant is. Those, our new consultant and new coordinator will be to support the work that's happening and the work that you continue to advocate for. Wanted to put an early plug, Thursday, April 2nd, 2026. We're going to shift a little bit and we're going to hold a gifted information session at Merton. Time is evening so that all students, families who are interested in hearing about the gifted programming can come to one central location, and then the subsequent kind of welcome information nights will happen once placements have been determined, so that they're going to the school that they're going to attend. But I wanted to put that early date in your on your radar. Wednesday, April 8th. So the following week, we've designated as our kindergarten information session. We're hoping we don't need a snow date or a ice storm date or anything, but so far we've got those dates. Last year and the year before, I think they were held in Milton, which seems to be a pretty central location. So details around the where are coming, but at least we know the when. And then in April and May, all the schools that have an ESC, an STC, and a CLC will have their information sessions. So it will be between April and May. And once we get some finalized dates, we'll share that as well. But I wanted to get ahead of it as we've been talking about planning, and there's so much going on, and sometimes it seems to cluster at one time and then there's a bit of a lull, although I don't really experience the lull, but there seems to be a little bit of a lull and then it ramps up again. So just wanted to make sure that those dates were on your radar. Of course, yesterday we recognized Father's Day, and for the remainder of this month, we included some of the dates that might be of importance to you. Of course, maybe you would not have known, but we have 9 more days of school. And on June 27th, it will be the elementary last day with an early dismissal for students. And the last day for secondary will also be on June 27th. Sorry, I almost said January 27th. Celebrating some of our programs, we had a rescheduled JZ Bat, so it was supposed to finish in May, but because of the weather, it wasn't cooperating. We ended up having a makeup date for the Burlington in June, and the weather was perfect. It was even a little bit cloudy, so it wasn't, in the sun for too long, and it was just a very comfortable temperature. It was just a great day. We also had Life Skills Prom last week, and we want to thank Notre Dame for hosting. They did an awesome job. The theme was Under the Sea, under the sun and under the sea, and it was awesome, awesome, awesome. And tomorrow we will be recognizing our Project Search graduates. So that will happen tomorrow, I believe, at St. FX. We already talked about the mental health policy. So we're done for our round. It's going to go to board tomorrow, hopefully without event. And that'll be updated on the policy website. I've included some dates that might be helpful around reporting. Again, a reminder about the last day of school, just in case anyone forgot. And next year, we're going to be launching the Blessed and Beloved curriculum, which is the revised religion curriculum for grades 1, 2, and 3. So we know that students of all ages and all abilities will be, receiving this new curriculum. And we have, in past, collaborated with our students with diverse needs if we need to modify or accommodate any of the material. So we're looking forward to that partnership and supporting students with that new curriculum. And on to the manager's reports. So EAs have been busy preparing for students for the summer break, supporting the development of social stories, bless you, and transition booklets for students transitioning to a new school. Some students benefit from a countdown calendar, which have also been prepared and sent home to families, supporting an understanding of the return to school in September. We also have Camp Unity taking place this summer, a camp for children and youth with FASD, by providing space for the camp at St. Anne's School in July. We don't have psychology updates at this time, but a full complement, which is very happy. We're very excited about that. On June 4th, so from our CYCs, the CYCs hosted our annual baby celebration in honor of celebrating its successes in the 23 Roots of Empathy programs that ran across HCDSB this year. The annual baby celebration was hosted at St. Scholastica. We had 16 tiny teachers, their parents and instructors made up of CYC and DECEs in attendance. And we wish to share a huge thank you to our tiny teachers, parents, instructors, and schools for their ongoing commitment and participation. The mental health team is planning its first ever summer workshop for secondary mental health and well-being champions. Actually, a couple of months ago, was it May? Yes, May, we did a presentation on the mental health champions at the board table. And after we did a debrief, we discussed how to expand and build on that. And so really excited that we're going to have our very first summer workshop. And over 2 days in August, students will be engaged in learning about well-being and planning for activities that they can lead in their schools, as well as planning for the elementary Champions Days, which is exciting. They'll get volunteer hours. I think there's free lunch included, some transportation if required. So really excited about that. And this year we come to the end of our 3-year mental health and well-being strategy. And so our annual action plan will be presented at the board meeting tomorrow in advance of it being posted on the public-facing board site by June 30th. And on June 9th, St. Thomas Aquinas hosted a job launch celebration to thank the Ontario Trillium Foundation for their generous support. Their grant has helped run the Job Lunch Employment Skills Program and Life Skills classes at our high schools for the past 3 years. The program has given students valuable experiences and confidence as they prepare for their workspace. And a big thanks also to go out to Explore Employment Community Living Oakville for being amazing partners in making this program a huge success. Just checking, make sure I didn't forget anything. Oh, sorry, correction. The gifted information night, we did move to March 25th because April 2nd is Holy Week. So it is a week earlier. So March 25th, and I'll correct it on the minutes so that you have that update for you. Thank you, Jen. She's still taking care of me over there. Supporting the transition of students into school from grade to grade, including grade 8 to secondary school, and from grade 12 or year 7 to the next pathway is also taking place at this time. We had a partnership with the Halton Regional Police. They ran the Torch Run for Special Olympics, which took place Wednesday, June 4th at Sherwood Forest Park in Burlington. We had an opening ceremony followed by a walkthrough to the park and of course pizza lunch, and 20 schools participated in that. Last week we had our Special Olympics track and field, which was held at the Track and Field Systems Finals on June 11th at St. FX in Milton. Over 130 students and 34 schools participated in the activity, rotations, and races. SEA will be donating over 20 pieces of equipment over the summer For the Needy, Not the Greedy, an association that refurbishes medical and mobility equipment to those in need. We reviewed the board special education plan with colleagues in special education services. And on June 17th, tomorrow, our 2024-2025 cohort of Project Search interns will be celebrating their graduation. And last but not least, all certs and sets were invited to participate in a full day of RISE training on June 10th and June 12th. And in fact, this week, administrators are getting Cole's Notes. That's how old I am. We used to have Cole's Notes when I was in school, a condensed version. So I think that hits all updates for this time. I know we just met a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to say that. And not on the agenda, a huge thank you to all the members here of SEAC for all that you do and for your ongoing support out in the community, as well as the support you offer here at this table for one another. And I will stop there.
Thank you, Superintendent Jack Caldera. 2 weeks, but it's still a lot going on your plate. So that's great. Thank you so much for that. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Superintendent Jack Caldera? No? Yes? No? Okay, great. Again, thank you to Superintendent Jack Caldera for that report. And we're going to move on to the next item. Number 10, SEAC discussion item or questions. Does anyone have any discussion items or questions they want to bring? People know. Going once, going twice. Okay. So we will. Yeah, okay, go ahead, Brianna.
Sorry, through the chair, can I ask a question? Just Autism Ontario is working with our MIATC, did I say it right? RAT, we just got one that's working with the ministry. We haven't had, that position's been vacant for a while. So one of the questions they had proposed to us was, can students who are not in life skills but are credit earning and locally developed, can they still qualify for EA support within our board if they're still credit earning? But so they've evolved from life skills and they're now in locally developed, but still require some support in that classroom. Can they receive that support if they want to be credit earning?
For you, Chair?
Yes, because I can't answer.
Sorry.
So if I understand the question correctly, the answer could be yes, depending on what the student's profile of needs are. So we do what we call a rubric to just identify, are there certain times of the day that they need support? Maybe it's transitioning, maybe it's organization, maybe it's feeding, like there might be a variety of things. So in those cases, whether they're in life skills or not, we do the rubric based on how they present and what their needs are. And then there may be times during the day where they're independent and other times during the day where they're receiving those additional supports. So that's my answer.
That's a good answer.
That's a good answer again.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any additional questions for anybody or? Okay. With that, we'll go on to item 11, meeting summary and next steps. So I should have summarized this better. Sorry. We had the budget presentation, the budget survey presentation from Dr. Cullimore, the budget presentation from Aaron Lofts and Adam Cross. I think maybe we'll put it on the agenda for next September, maybe to prepare a mental health letter just to kind of advocate for additional funding from the province. And we'll see if we can volunteer for it. If not, I'm happy to prepare something and ask for some expert input from staff or from people around this table. So maybe we'll do that next school year. The next agenda is sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Next meeting summary, next steps. That's it, actually. Okay, so we'll do that maybe for the next SEAC meeting and discuss it a little further as an action item, perhaps. And go on to item 12. The next agenda is Monday, September 29th, 2025. Hard to believe we're already finishing another school year, but here we are. And can I get a resolution, item 13, a resolution for absentees? We just heard from Trustee Brenda Agnew. Okay, anybody else? No, okay. So can I get a resolution, someone to move, we need to move that, right? Okay, sorry. Mover for the resolution for the absentees. Jessica, thank you. And a seconder?
I can.
All right, thanks, Brianna. So Jessica moves it, Brianna seconds it. Thank you so much. Okay, so item 13 is done. Before you get onto item 14, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for all your time for this school year, attending the meetings. Thank you to staff members who attend, take time out of the day. Thank you to Denise Cawley and Jennifer Thompson. Jennifer's here. I think, Jen, you're here every meeting, so thank you. Good luck in your endeavors in Niagara, is it? Yeah. Best wishes. I'm sorry to lose you, but good for you. Congratulations. Thank you to senior staff, Director Klein for attending our meetings, and Sabrina Jack Caldera for supporting us. Thank you to the trustees for attending as well. Fellow members, thank you to Chair Trustee Brenda Agnew. She does a great job chairing this, much better job than I do, hands down. And of course, thank you to Margaret, who does a great job keeping this bus on the road, documents and communication and everything. So thank you so much for all your help. With that, we can move on to, and thank you to all the members, of course, for attending. With that, we can move on to item 14, adjournment and closing prayer, and we're going to have the end of year slideshow right after that. So can I have a mover, please, for adjournment? Tracy, moving? Okay, great. Tracy moves it. And Marian's going to, okay, great. Tracy moves it. Marian's going to second it. Okay. And that brings us to closing prayer. And right after closing prayer, we'll run the slideshow. That's okay? Right, perfect. Thank you. Okay, can you get you to all join me in the sign of our faith? In the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Blessed are you, O God of all creation. Each day you spread before us the rich and wonderful diversity of the human family created in the divine splendor of your love. Fashioned in your image, you call us to love one another with the same tender care with which you brought us to creation. Each one of us is but one small part of the glory that is you. As we serve the students and families of the Halton Catholic District School Board on the Special Education Advisory Committee, fill us with your grace, guide us with your wisdom, and give us the strength and courage to do your work, so that it may always be said of our every act, God saw that it was good. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Have a great summer, and we'll finish off with the Right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good summer, and we'll see you in September. Thanks so much.